Yes, of course.
So hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I am just overly excited. I'm joined by my childhood, this is my favourite author on this planet. This is Malorie Blackman. She is the author of Noughts and Crosses.
I didn't mind.
I'm so nervous. Okay, right. She's the author of Noughts and Crosses, the book that has, I feel, for me and my friends, has grown up with us. When this came out, I was quite young when it first came out, in 2001, I believe, but I remember reading it when I was 10 or 12, and I reread it, and each time I read it, I just fell more and more in love with it, and it's just one of those books that I think lives throughout the generations, and thank you for that. And I just wanted to know, when you wrote this book, what was the climate like, the time when you wrote it, and why did you feel the need to write a book like this?
Well, it was really inspired by the Stephen Lawrence case, and I was watching a sort of drama documentary on the television about how the Lawrence family were treated by the police and who wouldn't take it seriously and so on, and that the whole way the case was mismanaged. And I remember watching it getting just more and more angry, and I thought, up until then, people have been saying, oh, Malorie, you should be writing about racism, you should be writing about racism, as if racism was the only thing I was qualified to write about. But I was watching that and I thought, you know what, now I'm ready to write about racism, and I'm going to do it my way. And it just occurred to me, and I was originally wanted to do something about the legacies of slavery. And the whole way that black people are assumptions made about us, and just the way we're sort of treated and so forth in this society. And I was thinking, should I do it about slavery or should I do it about the legacy of slavery? I wasn't quite sure what angle to take. And then I thought, and I passed it by some friends, and it was sort of like, my sort of black friends were, oh God, that's so painful, why do you want to go there? And my white friends were, that was so long ago, why do you want to go there? And it was just exactly, and it was just interesting. It was fascinating, the responses, because it was sort of like everyone felt, even I hadn't written a word, and it was almost like everyone felt they knew what was going to be in it, what it was going to say, etc. So I thought, I need to do this and do it in a way that people won't expect, and that's how the inversion came back. That's how I decided to flip it, so that and in fact I only refer to colour once throughout the entire book. So I have a noughts and crosses, or daggers and blankets. And I wanted to play with people's assumptions, because now people tend to know the sort of the sort of premise of the story. But when I remember when I gave my mum a proof, and she read it, and then she started reading it, and then she phoned me up and said, is Callum white or black? And I said, he's white, Mum. And she said, oh God, now I'm going to have to start reading the book all over again. I know he's black. So the assumption that the poor boy in it was black and the rich girl in it was white was really interesting, because a number of people who don't know the sort of premise of it came to it with that assumption. And I love playing around with that, and sort of and then the whole kind of assumptions made and so forth, and that was it forced me in a way to be even-handed, because I was telling the story from both of their points of view, but it forced me to be even-handed in how I was portraying both of their lives.
I think that's why when I said to you earlier that this book genuinely stayed with so many of me and my friends, is because of what you did in that book. You played on that stereotype. You knew people would come into this book expecting one thing, and when you flipped it on its head, I think it was powerful, because it made people rethink situations and see it a different way. Because more often than not, what I find is when something is happening to a young black girl, something's happening to a young black girl, but when it's happening to a young white girl, people, they react differently. So I think when you flip the races in this book, and the powers and the superiority and all that kind of stuff, I think it really made people start to see things in a different way.
I hope so. But also, you know that saying about you can't really experience someone's life unless you walk in their shoes for a while. And I wanted it to be kind of the white people in this or the noughts who are disadvantaged and who are being where people are being prejudiced against them and so forth. But also at the same time, I wanted some of the crosses, from their point of view, all they're doing is they like the status quo because the status quo works for them. So why bother changing it? So it's not that everybody is kind of malevolent or whatever. It's just the people's vested interests, and if society works for you, why would you want to change it? But it doesn't work for everybody, and it's kind of like, I hope, kind of just addressing that through the lives of Seffi and Callum within that story.
Yeah, and I was on your Twitter, like I used to tweet you all the time.
Okay.
This is honestly, I used to tweet you all the time, and I read on your Twitter that a 5th one might be coming out.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, called Crossfire, coming out this year.
What can we expect and anticipate in this? Because
you'll have to read the book. I'm not saying a word.
When Knife Edge came and then check me, and then there was like another one.
Yeah.
What else can like?
Well, it's kind of leading on from Double Cross, which is the 4th in the series, and so it's kind of Toby and Callie, but it's also a sort of next generation. I thought with 3 generations, I think that's. I like the idea of having 3 generations of stories told within the series. It's been an interesting journey, let's put it that way. So.
I can imagine, I'm so excited, and honestly I think a lot of us, like I said, this came out in 2001, it's now 2019, and the fact that these books have actually grown up with us, and I think what's amazing is your ability to adapt to each climate. So right now, when you wrote this, Black Lives Matter was not yet a movement,
exactly.
Things like Me Too, all of these things were not yet happening, and they were happening, just people were not speaking about it yet. So now that you're writing this new one, do you feel as though what's happening around you kind of has fed into that book?
Oh gosh, yes. In fact, I hadn't envisaged writing another one until we had Brexit and then Trump got in. And then I thought, and then the idea just sprung into my head, and I thought, I've got to write this. And just the whole thing about political machinations and how politics, even if you say I'm not into politics, but it affects everybody's lives.
You can't avoid it.
Exactly.
You might not be into it in terms of going to read up on it, but it's
going to affect you.
Every single day.
Exactly. Again, explore that, but within the lives of the characters within that story.
Yeah.
So.
I think it's amazing. This has honestly been a dream come true for me, to kind of read something for such a long time, understand it my own way, interpret it, and then to meet the person who brought it to life. And it's just.
Yeah, but what I love about this is I might have had an idea in my head when I wrote it, but other people have said, oh, but do you mean this and do you mean that? And each interpretation is valid in its own way as well. It's what you take from it, because I've had letters from around the world about it actually, and it's like people like, I've had letters from Ireland saying, are you talking about Protestants and Catholics and the situation there? I've had letters from like the Middle East saying, are you talking about the situation between the Palestinians and Jewish people? So it's just really fascinating to me that people take what they want and what they need from it. And as I said, I only mentioned colour once in fact the entire book, and it's just noughts and crosses, daggers or blankers, so people can then assign it to their own lives, and hopefully it will have relevance to their own lives.
Yeah, and I mean, a question that I've always had in mind is, I've seen a few people that comment and say things that they don't like this book because why has she done that? Why is she playing with race? Why are we writing about race? And with the backlash you've received, has it ever made you question, why did I write this? No, because with all due respect, I mean, if you don't like the book, you don't like the book. Can't do much about that. But I would never dream of asking people what I should be writing. Yeah. That's not how it works. I mean, I have to write what I'm passionate about and hope that I can drag a few people along with my passions. There's some people the book makes incredibly uncomfortable, and then I think, well, then I've done my job. I was going to say
and there's people saying, why do you need to go there and so forth, but again, then I think then I've done my job. And it's just, I hope what it does is it opens up a conversation about race, and I think unfortunately we kind of tend to shy away from that, and we shouldn't, because then you get people who are able to put their own messages out there which aren't being counteracted, and I just feel that we need to sit down and have an honest dialogue and conversation about race and racism and so on.
My gosh, well, I agree with everything you're saying. I'm gonna have to rewatch this a few times and be like, this really did happen, Vee. Thank you so much. I honestly really appreciate having you on my channel.
It's my pleasure.
Guys, if you have, I don't even know why I would recommend you to read this, because if you haven't read it at this point, I just don't know what's going on. But you guys should read this book. It's available in all good bookstores.
And make sure you watch the BBC TV series that comes out later this year.
Honestly, following your Twitter, I get so many updates about what's happening, and I would get so excited. The fact that it's going to be on TV.
And there's a plays out at the moment, that's right, the pilot theatre.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Malorie, and I can't wait to hear you speak in there, and I can't wait to read the 5th book in the series.
Well, my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.